Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. Today, we're going to catch you up on everything that happened in the Faroe Islands this past October. Imagine you just kind of took a month-long break from all the news and now you're feeling a little bit out of touch. Well, that's what we're going to fix right now. We're covering all the highlights of local politics, the economy, culture, even a bit of sports and weather. So you ready to jump in?
Let's do it.
Okay, so first up, politics. Um, Looks like October was a pretty busy month for Parliament, with the 2025 budget taking center stage. Anything in particular that really sparked debate?
Well, the budget always gets people talking, but one particularly contentious point I would say was how much they were going to spend on all the different infrastructure projects. There were different opinions on which projects they should really focus on first and how exactly they should be paying for all of it.
Okay, makes sense. It wasn't just the budget keeping Parliament busy, though, right? That new fisheries deal with Norway also made headlines.
Oh, yeah, for sure. This new agreement changed up the quotas for some of the shared fish stocks and set some new rules for how they're going to manage the fisheries together in the North Atlantic.
Interesting. And then, of course, you got the pension system, always a hot topic. Looks like they proposed some changes that caused a bit of a stir.
Yeah, the government wanted to adjust the retirement age and change some of the benefit calculations. They said it was to make sure the system is sustainable in the long run, but of course this got everyone talking and debating, all the different stakeholders.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, any changes to pensions are going to have a big impact on people. Now it looks like beyond those kind of big three issues, there were a few other things keeping the government busy in October. We saw potential changes to the alcohol laws, ongoing discussions about same-sex marriage, a visit from the government of Greenland, and participation in an Arctic conference.
Right, all of that was happening too. They were talking about possibly changing the rules around alcohol. The debate about same-sex marriage is still going on. Some representatives from the Greenlandic government came for a visit, and a delegation from the Faroe Islands went to a big international conference about the Arctic.
Wow, so really full plate for the government this month.
Eh,
Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about the economy, starting with Bakkafrost, the big salmon farming company. Their third quarter results came out in October. What those look like?
Bakkafrost said they harvested a little bit more salmon this year compared to last year, but they also said that prices were kind of all over the place, and it was costing them more to actually produce the salmon.
Okay, so kind of a mixed bag then. Now there's also tourism. A brand new tourism company launched in October, and it looks like they're going to be focusing on some pretty unique travel experiences.
Yeah, this new company is all about giving people really special, curated tours and activities. They want to show visitors all those really unique parts of Faroe's culture and history and nature. They're going for those visitors who want something a bit different, those who really want to immerse themselves and get off the beaten path.
Very cool. Speaking of getting to the Faroe Islands, Atlantic Airways announced they're going to be increasing the number of flights to Copenhagen.
Yep, looks like they're adding more flights to Copenhagen because more and more people want to travel to and from the Faroe Islands.
Makes sense. Now, beyond those specific things happening with Bakkafrost and this new tourism company, it looks like there were a few other notable things going on with the economy in October. The Chamber of Commerce had that big conference on innovation. The aquaculture industry is still growing. There were some new investments in wind energy projects, and the trade deficit is unfortunately continuing.
Yeah, that's all right. The Chamber of Commerce had a conference to try and encourage businesses to be more innovative. Aquaculture is still growing beyond just salmon farming. Some companies announced they're going to put money into building new wind farms to make more renewable energy, and the latest numbers show that we're still importing more than we're exporting.
Okay, so a lot happening on the economic front, as always.
Yeah.
Now, how about culture? It seems like October was a really busy month for the arts. First up, television. A new Faroe's TV series just premiered on KVS.
Yep, that's right. This new drama is set in a small village out in the islands, and it's all about family community and how modern life is changing even those traditional communities.
Sounds interesting. In the visual arts world, there was a new exhibition at Miller's Pakhus.
There was. They had a big group exhibition with works from a bunch of different Faroes artists working today. There were paintings, sculptures, photographs, installations, all kinds of things.
Cool. Looks like the Faroes Literature Prize was also awarded.
It was. They gave the prize to a novelist this year. He wrote this amazing historical fiction novel about a really important time in Faroes history.
It's always so exciting to see who wins these awards. In music, the Nordic House had a music festival.
Yeah, they did. The Nordic House is always promoting Nordic arts and culture, and they had this great festival with all kinds of musicians from the Faroe Islands and all over the world.
Nice. And focusing specifically on Faroe's language and culture, there was a conference at the university.
Yep, they had this big conference at the university with scholars and educators and people who are really involved in Faroese culture. They talked all about the language and how to keep it alive and how it's changing and the role it plays in Faroe society today.
Oh, so much to see and do in October. Okay, let's turn to health for a minute. The National Hospital had a big event all about heart disease.
They did. They wanted to raise awareness about heart health. They had screenings and information sessions and even the experts there to give people advice about how to prevent heart disease and how to manage it if you have it.
Really important topic. There were also a couple of other health-related things happening in October. A new study looking at what school children are eating and some initiatives to provide more mental health support for the elderly.
Right. Some researchers from the university wanted to see what kids are eating these days and see if there's anything we could be doing better when it comes to nutrition. And a few community groups got together to try and improve mental health services for older people and give them more opportunities to socialize.
That's great to hear. Okay, moving on to the environment. There was a big cleanup initiative on Streymoy.
Yeah, a bunch of volunteers from all over the island came out to pick up trash from the beaches and the coastline and public spaces.
I love to see that. People taking action to take care of the environment. Now, there was also some news about how salmon lice are impacting wild salmon stocks.
There was. A new research study showed that the salmon lice from the fish farms could be having a pretty serious impact on wild salmon here in the Faroe Islands. They said we need to look into this more carefully and figure out what we can do about it.
Yeah, that sounds like it could be a big problem. Speaking of marine issues, the Faroe Islands participated in an international conference on protecting the marine environment.
Right, a group of people from the Faroe Islands went to this conference. They talked about things like pollution and overfishing and how climate change is affecting our oceans.
Okay, so a lot to talk about on the environment front, too. Now, before we wrap up this part of our October deep dive, let's talk about something a little bit more fun. Sports. October was another busy month for sports here in the Faroe Islands. We had everything from football to handball to judo to even a record-breaking running achievement.
It was a busy month. I think one of the biggest events had to be that football match between HB Torshavn and P. Kloksvik. That one was part of the Betri Dilden, and everyone was really excited for it.
I bet. Those are two of the best teams in the league.
Yep.
Okay, we'll hear more about sports in a little bit, but for now, let's take a quick break. We'll be back soon to cover even more from October in the Faroe Islands. Stay with us.
It was a really close game, went right down to last minute. HB Torshavn actually scored the winning goal in the final seconds of the match.
Wow, talk about a dramatic finish. So, besides that big football match, what else was going on in the world of Faroe sports?
Well, the handball team had a qualifying match for the European Championships, and there was also a big judo tournament with some really talented athletes. Oh, and one Faroese runner actually set a new national record for the marathon.
Wow, so many great accomplishments.
Yeah.
Okay, well, before we finish up our deep dive into October in the Faroe Islands, we have to talk about the one thing that's always on everyone's mind, the weather. So what was it like in October?
Well, October here in the Faroe Islands, it's always a bit unpredictable. This year was no different. We had a lot of wind and rain and fog, of course, but we also had a few days where the sun actually came out. Temperatures were pretty mild for this time of year, all things considered.
Sounds about right. So all in all, October 2024 was a pretty eventful month, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, definitely. Lots going on in politics and the economy. Lots of interesting things happening in the world of culture. And of course, plenty of action in the world of sports.
It's really amazing how much can happen in just one month. It kind of makes you wonder where things are headed.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think all of this shows how dynamic Faroe society is. We're always trying to find that balance between tradition and progress. We want to maintain our connections to the rest of the world while still holding on to our local identity. It's always changing, always adapting.
That's a really good way to put it. Now, if any of our listeners want to learn more about any of the specific events we talked about today, you can always go to the KVF website. They've got all of their news archives there, so you can go back and read all about it.
Yeah, KVF is a great resource if you want to really dig in.
All right, so that brings us to the end of our October 2024 deep dive. We hope you enjoyed taking this little journey with us through a month in the life of the Faroe Islands. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring. It really makes you think about all the changes that are happening. So as we wrap up, I'm curious, what stands out to you as particularly significant from everything we covered today?
That's a good question. I think one thing that keeps coming up is this idea of sustainability. We talked about the investments in renewable energy and the concerns about salmon lice and the debate about the pension system. All of that is about trying to find that balance between what we need now and what we need to do to protect the future.
Yeah, that's a great observation. It really does seem like sustainability is becoming more and more important for the Faroe Islands. I'm really interested to see how those different initiatives and discussions develop in the next few years. Any final thoughts for our listeners before we sign off? Something they can think about as they keep up with the news from the Faroe Islands?
Well, we were talking about sustainability, and I think it's really interesting to think about how the Faroe Islands can be more involved in the world, have a bigger presence on the global stage. But at the same time, we don't want to lose our unique culture or our environment. It's a tricky balance.
Absolutely. It's a complicated world out there. And the Faroe Islands definitely have some unique challenges and opportunities. But it seems like they're facing all of it with a lot of common sense and creativity and a real respect for their heritage. Well, folks, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into October 2024 in the Faroe Islands. We hope you enjoyed it. And until next time, stay curious, keep exploring, and thanks for joining us on the deep dive.